The gentleman here on the left.
If we held this debate 20 years ago, you'd probably insert Japan for China at that time, and we see that that kind of played out a different way, despite what Michael Crichton might think. That said, how does Japan kind of enter into the debate here? I mean, if you think about it, there is some scholarship or some theory that suggests that we should think about Japan as a bulwark against a rising China. And I'd like to get fielder's choice from the panelists. How do you think Japan plays in, in terms of the Constitution, in terms of rearmament? How can they play a constructive role in perhaps bringing some kind of accommodation in Asia?
And the gentleman up there in the blue shirt.
Thanks. This is for the speakers against the motion. You had said that China has no ideology, and yet if a booming China means that U.S. is increasingly dependent on China, and yet China has shown its interest in supporting rogue or failed states such as Sudan, and yet because of our dependence on China, it inhibits our ability to intervene in those situations. How would you respond to that?
Thank you very much. Jim McGregor, do you want to deal with Japan, and who'd like to deal with China's role in Sudan? Let's start with Japan.
Well, no, I want to address where he talks about us being dependent on China. Who's dependent on whom here? Look at no one's talking about the Chinese people and the economic ties. China's oil companies, China's banks, China's telecom companies are all listed on overseas stock exchanges. They're the second biggest buyers of U.S. treasuries. They're completely tied into us. We're not dependent on China in any way, shape, or form. We're tied together, which is for the common good. A country that is tied together that deeply and economically, and the amount of jobs that are created by the consumers in America, by the foreign companies, 60-some% of exports from China come from foreign companies. So we're so intertwined, it just brings more stability.
But Jim McGregor, doesn't this question cut to exactly the problem? We're having two debates here this evening. On the right-hand side, you have people who are talking about foreign policy and national security, and on the left-hand side, we have people talking about economic growth and commercial opportunity. And actually, when you come to it, when you look at a case like Sudan, when you look at China's involvement in Zimbabwe, actually, we're failing to address or engage China in constructive diplomatic, work around the world.
Well, if you look at what have we done, China now is awash with money, and they're looking to invest overseas. When they came to buy Unocal, which pumped, I think, 0.8% of American oil, Congress looked at this as a national security threat and pushed them away. We've pushed Middle East money out of China, out of the U.S. already. They're going to China. China's now going out in the world to invest, and we're starting to push them away. This isn't the Philistines of the business community against the honorable people of the PhD world. This is commercial reality versus theory.
Thank you very much. A couple more questions. The lady up here.
Hi, my name is Jolie Hunt. This is for James McGregor. Speaking of commercial realities, I'm very surprised that censorship hasn't come up, especially as we're against this motion. And it doesn't seem like we're comparing apples to apples here. It's more like bullets to grenades. And if we have to act like responsible citizens, how can we not pay attention when China doesn't? So the question comes to censorship and the notion that companies like Google and Yahoo have to make restrictions on news and information there, and how can we compete with them? And saying that America can take it seems to be rather naive.
This is for any one of the gentlemen against the motion. Here's my question. China's ability to produce goods for far less than America has caused untold numbers of our citizens to lose their jobs. Doesn't that mean that the China boom has already caused trouble for America?
Thank you very much. Who'd like to start with that question? Jim McGregor, do you want to talk about the outsourcing problem?
No, I'll talk about censorship, because I'm out of the media.
Okay, you're going to... Daniel, okay, let's start Daniel Rosen with outsourcing. And we're going to have to keep it relatively short, I'm afraid.
Right. The automobile industry was a terrible, terrible threat to the horse and buggy industry here in New York City. In fact, we're down to about 100 people in horse and buggy now. They're all in Central Park. The U.S., unlike almost every other great power that we've seen, has shown itself entirely open to change, to adjustment. Instead of trying to defend an increasingly uncompetitive status quo, we've found ways to innovate, to adjust, to continue to be competitive, despite the changes that necessarily take place in the world around us today. Trouble is a given, change is a given. It's unfortunate, it's difficult for people that are faced with the immediate consequences of it, but there's really very little alternative to it. Finally, we have a 4.5% unemployment rate in this country. How much lower do we really want it to go?
Thank you.
On the commercial realities part, I'd like to get in a word there.
Sorry, Bill Gertz, yes.
Yeah, the issue of China's proliferation activities hasn't been raised, but China, as many of us know, gave nuclear technology to Pakistan in the 80s and 90s. That nuclear technology ended up going to Libya and Iran and North Korea. And they even found Chinese language nuclear warhead design documents when they dismantled Libya's nuclear program. Chinese companies since 2001 have been sanctioned more than 80 times. And they're doing this as part of a policy that's usually denied by the central government, but in reality, China is helping these rogue states with with weapons technology, both missiles and weapons of mass destruction.
Thank you very much, Bill Gertz. And finally, on censorship.
Well, I'm against that too, thank you. On censorship, the quick answer is the internet has changed China, and China is fighting a losing battle every day with information. You wouldn't believe what is on the blogs. Google handled it okay, Yahoo handled it terribly. What Google did is they had to be in that market. I'm glad they're in that market because they're pushing the envelope on freedom of information. And what they did is they labeled their searches that they're censored, which drove the Chinese government crazy. Yahoo, on the other hand, caved right in, gave them names of people that were using Yahoo email accounts. We have to be there. We have to be pushing for freedom of information, and it's happening. Let the Chinese people do it.
Jim McGregor, thank you very much. I know that many more of you have questions. I'm afraid we're not going to have time for them, but please feel free to maul our panelists after the debate.